Comment ça, les choses ont changé depuis 2 ans? Ailleurs peut-être, monsieur, et je ne veux pas le savoir.
Before he took his own life, Nicolas Beaucaire left behind a single, handwritten line found near his bedside. On August 13, 2025, the world lost Nicolas Beaucaire, a brilliant, brooding talent of French cinema, to a private battle that had long gone unseen. News of his passing, officially confirmed today, has shaken fans, peers, and an entire industry that once hailed him as a quiet storm of intensity, elegance, and pain. To the world, Nicolas was the epitome of French artistry. His face was unforgettable. Sharp cheekbones, dark eyes that seemed to carry entire stories without a word, and a voice that could soothe or haunt in equal measure. He was not a celebrity in the loud sense. He was something rarer, a presence, a man who embodied the complexity of the roles he played, and perhaps was never able to fully step away from them. Over the years, he delivered performances that critics called devastatingly intimate, beautifully restrained, and aching with internal war. He had the kind of soul that made audiences lean in, not to be entertained, but to understand. And yet, the more he gave to his characters, the more it seemed to cost him in return. Those close to Nicolas say he had been fighting depression for years. A sensitive man in an unforgiving industry, he struggled with the pressures of fame, the loneliness of constant reinvention, and the silent weight of never feeling like he was enough. Despite the acclaim, despite the applause, his death wasn't theatrical. It wasn't forewarned. It was the final tragic act of someone who had given too much of himself to a world that never fully gave back. As tributes pour in across France and beyond, one thing becomes painfully clear. We didn't lose just an actor. We lost a mirror, someone who reflected the pain we hide, the longing we bury, and the humanity we often forget to see in those who move us most. This is not a biography. This is not a tabloid headline. This is the final, unfinished scene in the life of Nicolas Beaucaire, the man who tried. Nicolas Beaucaire belonged to a rare breed of performers, actors who never seemed to be playing a role, but rather revealing a private truth. His rise came not during the golden age of French cinema, but in a time of quiet evolution, when art house films and streaming platforms were beginning to collide, and the line between actor and character was becoming increasingly blurred. Born in Lyon in the early 1980s, Nicolas came of age in a France still reverberating with the shadows of the Nouvelle Vague. He studied at the prestigious Conservatoire National Supérieur d'Art Dramatique, where professors quickly noticed his intensity, his silence, and his obsession with emotional authenticity. While others rehearsed, Nicolas reflected, he didn't just memorize lines. He absorbed them, rewrote them in his body language, and spoke them as if they'd come from somewhere deep inside. He was drawn to roles that most others avoided: addicts, poets, war veterans, broken lovers. His characters rarely smiled, rarely won, rarely walked away clean, but they always left a mark. By his early 30s, Nicolas had established himself as a pillar of modern French cinema's darker side, a kind of reluctant heir to Jean-Louis Trintignant and Mathieu Amalric, yet entirely his own. The theme of his work was clear: internal collapse. Whether in the bleak romance of Les Silences de Novembre, the post-war drama Sous la poussière, or the haunting indie film Le Corps Absent, Nicolas excelled at portraying men who were unraveling, slowly, quietly, beautifully. He wasn't interested in charm. He was interested in truth, especially the uncomfortable kind. Directors adored him because he didn't act for the camera. He acted for the moment. He would ruin takes with raw improvisations, cry between scenes, or request to reshoot a line because he hadn't really felt it yet. But that same devotion came at a cost. Colleagues have since described how Nicolas would vanish between projects, avoid press events, and wrestle with self-doubt after each release. He hated watching himself on screen. He hated being celebrated for performances that came from parts of himself he never fully healed. In interviews, he rarely smiled. When asked why he chose such heavy roles, he once replied, "Because joy feels like fiction. Sadness, I know." That quote now haunts every article written about his death. The theme of Nicolas Beaucaire's life and death was not fame, it was fragility, the kind that lives just under the surface of brilliance, the kind that is often mistaken for mystery until it's too late. He was a man who lived between silences, and ultimately, those silences swallowed him. The rise of Nicolas Beaucaire did not follow the script of typical stardom. There were no tabloid romances, no red carpet scandals, no breakout moments of explosive popularity. His ascent was quieter, stranger, and far more haunting. It began in underground theater circles in Paris, where a then unknown Nicolas performed Chekhov and Genet in black box venues for crowds of 20. He didn't seek attention, he sought depth. In one early performance of The Seagull, he was so immersed in his role that he forgot to bow at curtain call, still lost in the silence of the character's final monologue. A critic from Libération later wrote, "He disappeared so fully into the play that it felt disrespectful to applaud." His film debut came in the mid-2000s, a minor role in La Chambre Vide, a bleak psychological drama about loss and isolation. Nicolas had no more than 20 minutes of screen time, but it was unforgettable. His final scene, a wordless breakdown in front of a bathroom mirror, earned him a nomination for Révélation Masculine at the César Awards. He didn't win, he didn't even attend the ceremony. That moment set the tone for the rest of his career. By 2010, Nicolas was becoming a regular face in France's most emotionally raw, stylistically minimal films. He turned down commercial projects, refused franchise offers, and avoided English-language roles despite numerous approaches from Hollywood. He chose instead to work with filmmakers who valued psychological realism over glamour. In Les Silences de Novembre, he played a man grieving the sudden death of his wife, unraveling through a series of nocturnal wanderings across Paris. Critics called it a masterclass in quiet devastation. Audiences left theaters in stunned silence. The film won the jury prize at Cannes. Nicolas declined all interviews. His most personal project came in 2017, Le Corps Absent, a semi-autobiographical art film he co-wrote and starred in. Shot in black and white with almost no dialogue, the film depicted a man slowly detaching from his identity, questioning what remains when the performance ends. The final shot, Nicolas staring into the lens, blinking back tears as the frame fades to white, became iconic in European cinema. But while his artistic credibility soared, his personal foundation weakened. Crew members described him as kind, but often unreachable. Between takes, he would retreat to corners of the set, headphones on, eyes closed. He rarely socialized, rarely celebrated. One director admitted, "I worried he was acting pain because he knew it too well." Friends tried to reach him. He always answered kindly, never completely. In 2022, he withdrew from 2 major productions, citing health concerns. Rumors of depression began to circulate, but Nicolas never confirmed or denied them. Instead, he issued a short, cryptic statement, "Sometimes you must disappear to remember who you are." That disappearance became literal. In 2023 and 2024, he vanished from public life. No premieres, no festivals, no press. His social media accounts went dark. His last role, in a small TV adaptation of a Camus novel, aired with little fanfare. And then, silence. Until the world learned on August 13, 2025, that Nicolas Beaucaire had taken his life. A man who once portrayed emptiness with such precision had now left behind a real void. The final tragedy of Nicolas's rise is that it never ended. He never peaked. He was still becoming, still deepening, still disappearing, even as we were just beginning to understand how much he had given. He wasn't chasing greatness, he was chasing honesty, and it cost him everything. In the months leading up to his death, Nicolas Beaucaire lived almost entirely off the radar. Friends described him as peaceful but far away, someone who answered messages with kindness but never initiated contact. He had returned to Lyon, his hometown, and was seen occasionally walking alone through Parc de la Tête d'Or, usually early in the morning, often scribbling into a notebook. He spoke little, but he observed everything. What few people knew was that behind those quiet days was a man unraveling. Not dramatically, not loudly, but in slow, invisible ways. According to sources close to the actor, Nicolas had struggled with severe depression for much of his adult life. It intensified after the release of Liqueur Absent, a film that many now believe was not just autobiographical in tone, but in desperation. In one of the final interviews he ever gave, when asked what drew him to roles steeped in loneliness, he answered, "Because sometimes I don't know where the character ends and I begin." That quote now reads like a premonition. Behind the performances, the prestige, and the critical acclaim, Nicolas was fighting a silent war. He once told a director, "I fear being seen almost as much as I fear being forgotten." That contradiction, craving connection yet recoiling from attention, became the defining tension of his private life. In early 2025, he began journaling obsessively. A close confidant revealed that he was working on a personal manuscript, part memoir, part philosophical meditation on identity, grief, and disconnection. Whether the manuscript will ever be released is unclear. What is clear is that it was not a farewell, but a plea for understanding. The note he left behind was short. J'ai essayé, je vous jure que j'ai essayé. I tried, I swear I tried. No drama, no explanation, just truth. His death has sparked mourning across the French film community. Vigils were held in Paris, in Lyon, in small art house cinemas, where his films had once been whispered about like secrets. Fellow actors have shared their heartbreak, describing him as the most emotionally generous soul and the gentlest collaborator. But perhaps the most haunting tribute came from a former co-star who said, "He gave us everything, and we never realized how much it hurt." The media has been respectful, unusually so, perhaps out of reverence, or perhaps because there is nothing scandalous to dissect here. Just a man, beautiful and broken, who reached his limit. The truth is, Nicolas Beaucaire didn't live to shock or provoke. He lived to understand. And when he could no longer find understanding, either from others or from himself, he stepped away in the only way he knew how. And now, those who once admired his ability to inhabit silence must face the silence he left behind. It's not just tragic, it's deeply, deeply human. At Legends and Secrets, we don't believe Nicolas Beaucaire's story is just about a loss. It's about a truth too often left unsaid, that brilliance and fragility often live side by side, that some of the most powerful performances come from the most quietly wounded souls. Nicolas was never a household name in the traditional sense. He didn't headline blockbusters or chase global fame. But for those who knew, really knew cinema, his face, his presence, his stillness, they were unforgettable. He was the actor other actors studied. He was the one who didn't need a line to make a moment unforgettable. We believe Nicolas's greatest role was not any one character he played, but the space he held for uncomfortable emotion. He made room for quiet suffering on screen. He dignified grief. He embodied uncertainty. In a time where cinema often leans toward spectacle, Nicolas reminded us of the power of stillness. And now, in his absence, we are reminded of something else, that the most essential stories are not always the loudest. Sometimes they are whispered. Sometimes they are carried in the way someone lowers their eyes. Sometimes they are lost until it's too late. His death is not a scandal. It is a wound. One that asks us to think harder about the pressure we place on artists to be bottomless, to give endlessly, to disappear into roles but still function in reality. At Legends and Secrets, we honor Nicolas not just for the films he left behind, but for the truth he allowed himself to show, even when it hurt, especially when it hurt. And now we ask you, what did Nicolas Beaucaire mean to you? Was there a scene, a line, a silence that you've never forgotten? This is how we keep him alive, not by replaying the pain, but by remembering the tenderness he gave us, and promising not to look away from the next person who feels the same. Because sometimes the strongest thing a person can do is simply say, "I tried." Some stories end with applause, others with silence. Nicolas Beaucaire's story ends with both. A final, aching stillness that says more than any standing ovation ever could. He wasn't here to impress. He was here to feel, to reveal, and to leave behind something honest in a world that so often prefers mass. He never gave us the easy version of anything. Not in his roles, not in his interviews, and certainly not in his life. What he gave us was more difficult: rawness, depth, a gaze that lingered too long, a silence that asked more questions than it answered. And now that he's gone, his work feels heavier, sharper, almost prophetic. Watch Le Corps absent again, and you'll see not a performance, but a farewell in slow motion. Revisit Les Silences de Novembre, and it no longer plays like fiction. It plays like a man trying to speak without being heard. He left us too soon, but he also left fully. He gave what he had, and in that there is no shame, only grief, only gratitude. Somewhere, someone is watching one of his films tonight for the first time. They will not know the headlines. They will not know the end. They'll just feel it, that subtle, slow ache that Nicolas always brought to the screen. And maybe they will understand something about themselves they never had words for. That was his gift. Some stories are never told, but now you know.